Consider life like a river in constant motion, with its turbulent and unpredictable waters. Within this river, there is a small boat called will, which we have the ability to drive with determination in the direction we choose. This is the aspect that is under our control, our will. However, around this river we find many rocks and rapids, representing external events and circumstances that are beyond our control. If we worry excessively about these stones, trying to change or divert them, we will be wasting energy on something we cannot truly change. This is like becoming slaves to these circumstances. Stoicism teaches us to be wise navigators on this river of life. We must focus our efforts on what we can control, that is, our will, and accept the currents and inevitable obstacles we encounter. By doing this, we can find an inner freedom that allows us to navigate with serenity, even in the face of external turmoil. Epictetus reminds us that the key to peace and fulfillment lies in our ability to discern between what we can control and what is beyond our control. By making this distinction, we free our minds from futile worries and embrace the inner freedom that Stoicism offers. This historical philosophy invites us to adopt a mindset of acceptance and adaptability to circumstances. When we face challenges, instead of rebelling or becoming anxious about what is beyond our control, we can direct our will to how we choose to respond. For example, if a setback at work occurs, instead of becoming frustrated, we can use our will to learn from the experience, adapt, and act constructively. This does not mean being passive, but rather acting effectively within the limitations that life presents to us. Imagine a situation in which anger begins to well up within you, threatening to consume your thoughts and actions. In these moments, Stoicism offers valuable guidance. Epictetus, a renowned philosopher, teaches us that anger is not triggered by circumstances themselves, but by our interpretation of them. In his words, people are disturbed not by what happens, but by the judgment they make of what happens. This gives us considerable power, the power to question our own judgments in moments of anger. When you feel like you're about to explode, pause and ask yourself if the situation is really important, if it's in line with your values and principles. This is the practical application of the historical technique of questioning your judgments. Just because something provoked your anger doesn't mean you should allow it to dictate your actions. Anger, when left unchecked, can be like a wildfire that spreads. Stoicism offers us the tool of self-reflection to extinguish this fire before it spreads, inviting us to calm, discipline and wisdom. Power over our emotions lies in our ability to choose our response rather than being hostage to circumstances. Another important aspect addressed by Stoicism is the control of anxiety. Anxiety often leads us to excessive worries about the future, where our thoughts are dominated by catastrophic scenarios. However, Stoicism offers an effective antidote to this mental anguish. One of the prominent Stoics guides us with his wisdom, saying that, "More things frighten us than hurt us, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." Historical philosophy teaches us to focus on the present, understanding that the future is uncertain and largely uncontrollable. This is where the historical practice of premeditation of evil comes into play. In this technique, we imagine the worst possible scenario and prepare our minds to face it with historical dignity. The key is in understanding that many of our fears never come true, as Marcus Aurelius reminds us. What is in our power is the preparation of the mind, what is not in our power is the direction of events. In the light of Stoicism, anxiety is seen as unproductive worry and a waste of mental energy. Philosophy teaches us to accept what we cannot change, embrace the present and face the future with a calm and resilient mind. It is a journey toward serenity through understanding human limitations and accepting the uncertain flow of life. 3. Concern management. Worries often plague us as we try to master the uncontrollable. Marcus Aurelius invites us to ponder this reality. We have no power over external nature, but we can shape our own being to be in tune with nature. This harmony, according to Stoicism, implies accepting what we cannot change and focusing our attention on what is under our control, that is, our judgments, attitudes and actions. This is where the historical technique of dissolution comes in, which involves analyzing our concerns in detail, breaking them down into smaller parts, and discerning what is concrete and tangible from what is irrational and unfounded. Furthermore, Stoicism constantly reminds us of the impermanence of life, a fundamental pillar of its philosophy. We must always keep our mortality in mind, a constant reminder given by Marcus Aurelius. It encourages us to prioritize what is truly important in our lives as we realize the ephemerality of worldly concerns. 4. Control of emotions. Emotions, in all their diversity and intensity, are an intrinsic part of the human experience. Although we cannot control what we feel, Stoics believe that we can control how we respond to those feelings. This principle applies directly to our emotional control. An emotional state can be compared to a passing storm, something that comes, takes up space and eventually passes. However, rather than allowing these storms to overwhelm us with overwhelming feelings, Stoic philosophy suggests that we observe them with detachment, acknowledging them but not completely identifying with them. This way, we can remain firm and balanced even in the face of intense emotions. For example, when a feeling of jealousy arises, instead of allowing ourselves to be consumed by it, we can question it, understand its origin and consciously decide not to allow it to influence our behavior. This requires a continuous exercise of introspection and self-control. 5. Fear control. Fear, one of the most primitive and powerful emotions, has the ability to paralyze us, preventing us from taking action or making decisions. In this sense, the Stoics believe that by confronting our fears in a direct and rational way, we can demystify many of the terrors that occupy our minds. We must ask ourselves what we really have to fear, distinguishing between reality and illusion. By doing these reflections, we can begin to break the paralyzing power of fear and understand that, most of the time, our fears are magnified by our own mind. Stoicism teaches us to be courageous, not in the absence of fear, but in its presence. This means facing life and its challenges with an attitude of strength, recognizing our fears but not allowing them to dominate us. 6. Joy control. It may seem strange to discuss controlling joy, since many of us aspire to more moments of happiness and contentment. However, Stoicism argues for moderation, even when it comes to joy. The idea is not to suppress or repress this emotion, but rather to prevent it from making us act impulsively or taking us away from our ethical principles and values. For example, at the height of success, it is easy to become arrogant or forget the ephemerality of fortune. The Stoics constantly remind us of the importance of maintaining a sense of humility and gratitude, regardless of circumstances, and of never allowing joy to blind us to reality. In short, Stoic philosophy provides a solid guide for navigating the sometimes turbulent waters of our emotions and feelings. Instead of being swept along by every emotional wave, we can learn to navigate with skill and grace, maintaining control of our own ship no matter what storms may arise. If you liked this video, subscribe to the channel, like, comment and share with someone who needs to watch this video. Your support is essential for us to continue sharing knowledge and inspiration with everyone. If you have suggestions for content you'd like to see in future videos, let us know in the comments. We value your opinion and it guides us in our mission to bring you increasingly rich and impactful content. Thank you and see you next time.